Welcome in, Agile Mentors. We're back for another episode of the Agile Mentors podcast. I'm with you as always, Brian Milner, and today I'm having back a good friend of mine, Miss Lucy O'Keefe is with us. Welcome back in, Lucy.
Thank you so much, Brian. So happy to be here again.
Uh, Lucy is actually had a change happen since the last time she was with us that we're very happy about. Lucy has achieved her certified Scrum trainer certification. So she is now able to train classes and certify people and everything else. So uh, just officially here from the show and from all of us, just a big, huge congratulations. I know it's a huge milestone.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, I'm really excited about being able to do all the things that certified Scrum trainers do and share with you, the journey that I've had and you had as well today and letting people understand what this is all about.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're going to be. We thought we'd talk about this a little bit because I get a lot of questions around what it's like to become a certified Scrum trainer, and people want to know if that's something they might want to do or not want to do. So we thought maybe we'd have a conversation just because Lucy has just come through, and it hasn't been that many years since I went through the same process, but it was prior to COVID. So it's going to be interesting for us to compare notes a
Mm-hmm.
little bit because as we were talking about before we started, it's just it was a very different animal. It's a very different animal now that we do virtual trainings.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so just to prepare everyone, I want to make sure I'm kind of laying out what we intend to do here. It is not going to be a step by step. It is not going to be a walkthrough of here's all the requirements. We are deliberately staying away from that because we feel like the Scrum Alliance does a really great job of that on the website. There's a lot of other material out there that will do that. We'll walk you through and talk about every single piece that you need to submit to become a certified Scrum trainer. We thought what we'd talk more about is just our process and what it was like for us going through this. So let's start at the beginning. Let's compare notes a little bit about when was the moment for you when you thought, you know what, I think I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go after this. Was there something that triggered it, or was it just sort of a slow realization?
Um, it's definitely a passion that grew throughout the many years since I finally realized that this is what I wanted to do. But it's something that I was in a class. It was 2017, so it's been a while. I'm mentored by Anu Smalley, which some of your listeners may know because you also had her
She's been on.
on the
She's been on the
podcast
show. So,
before. And I went to get my CSPO with her, and this was 2017. I had loved her when I went to Orlando for the Global Scrum Gathering, and she was wearing her astronaut suit and stuff because she was one of the people who were in charge pretty much of that Scrum Gathering, and I loved her then. And I was like, okay, I want to take a class with her, so I took my CSPO with her. And when I saw the way that she was teaching and how she was making me feel as a student in that class, I was like, oh my God, I really want to do this. Of course, I had been doing trainings in my companies, little trainings, to teach everybody else about Scrum and Agile, and I really loved doing it. But it wasn't until I sat in that class with her and I saw how she was um, influencing, so many people and impacting so many of us that I was like, wow, this is really something that's really special, and I hope to be able to do this someday. And right after that class, I asked her if she would mentor me on that journey.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I know in my case, I was an agile coach full time at an organization, and I don't really remember the moment that like the idea entered my head. I just remembered, I had gotten my certifications that were earlier than this, that you have to build up to doing this, and that was kind of the next layer. Was I going to kind of go the coaching route or go the trainer route? And I remember just kind of reaching this threshold, having a conversation with my wife about it, and saying, I think this is kind of where I should go. Like it feels like the right thing to do. And, it's not like I am locked into any decision if I start to pursue it and realize it's not the right thing. So I remember us talking about it and just making this decision saying, all right, we're going to move in this direction. I'm going to go in this direction. And if I feel like the door shuts at some point and it just feels like, hey, this is not for you, all right, then I'll maybe walk away. But that never happened for me. From that moment on,
Right.
it was just sort of like, yeah, this is right. This is the right thing to do.
And we're all
Um,
glad you're a CST, Brian. So,
well, yeah, it was. Well, it was long, right? I mean, I know
yeah.
for you as well, it was a long journey. And you know, I will say, for my part, I was told I was fast, that it actually went through really fast for me, but it felt like it was a long time. Um, mine, just to set everyone's standards here, I think mine was like 3.5, 4 years, something in that range. What was yours from like the moment you said, I want to do this?
6 years. Six
6 years.
years.
Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, I mean it is a long journey, and for everybody who's listening, to understand, I had just gotten my certified Scrum Master and certified Scrum Product Owner at that time, right? In order for you to even be able to start thinking about becoming a certified Scrum trainer, you have to have your professional, right? Your CSP, and I wasn't anywhere close to getting that yet, so I had to wait. Although I was already co-training, I co-trained with Anu very early on, and I was horrible at it. But that's why it takes so long, because there's so many things that you need to have done
yeah,
before you reach this level, right? So, but you already had all those certifications, so it made it a
right.
little
I
easier
was
and a little
already,
faster. Yeah.
yeah, I was already a CSP. I was lucky because when I got my CSM, the next stage up, being a CSP, did not require any class. There was not a level class like there is now, and basically the requirements at that time were that you had been doing this, I think, for 2 years. You had been a Scrum Master for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
um, and there were some other things you had to prove, but it was basically a submission. You submit
Yep.
your materials, and they approved you or didn't approve you. So basically, I had been a Scrum Master for 5 years before I got my CSM. I just thought, what do I need a certification for? I'm just doing the work. And when I finally got it, I remember that the trainer there said, "Hey, you might be able to just go ahead and submit because you've been doing this for a long enough time."
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a look at it after I got home and thought, I think it was like a $250 submission or
Yep.
something. And I thought, yeah, it's worth it. I'll submit it and see where it goes. So yeah, by the time that I had reached that and I got to that point, it was sort of like, yeah, I think this is the right thing to do. So,
Yeah.
um, so a little difference there in our stories with that portion of it. Um, let's talk about we can't fully get away from talking about the requirements because I think
Right.
that's part of the journey. Um, so just so everyone here understands, there's sort of two halves to your submission as a CST. There is a materials phase, and there's a TAC phase, a trainer approval committee phase. Uh, the longest for me was the materials phase, because there's a ton of materials that you have to get together, including your own course. You have to use their learning objectives and produce your own course and get that approved. So there's a lot that goes into that. And one of the things that I know is a big hurdle for people who want to do this is the Scrum Alliance really wants you to co-train with other CSTs. They want you to go into their class. Um, they want you to train. I think it's the suggested number is 10, and that is 10 that you train at least half the class. Which, when you hear that, you think, oh, that doesn't sound that bad. Well, it's a 2-day class, and getting someone to trust you with half of their class a whole day is not something. You can't just go to someone and say, hey, can I teach whole day of your class tomorrow? It's a relationship. You have to build that
Exactly.
up. So it was interesting to hear your story, because with Anu being a mentor for you, um, I'm sure that opened some doors. And did she help you, introduce you to others, and how did you
Yes.
make? Okay,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would have become a CST, and I told her this, and she doesn't agree with it. But I don't know that I would have become a CST already if it wasn't for her. Not only because of her mentorship, but also because she did introduce me to so many people. So I was able to co-train with some great trainers. She ran a well, we kind of still do it. A group, a mentoring group everyone, of a lot of people who wanted to become CSTs, and she just helped us out a ton with that. But yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for her, I don't know, especially after the pandemic, I don't know how I would have been able to, to meet these people and have these relationships and be able to co-train with them. So that definitely helped a lot. Of course, there were a couple of trainers that I knew already from global Scrum gatherings and stuff like that, but the majority of them definitely were because of her.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like that having that mentor kind of person is just completely vital. I know that was
Mhm.
for in my case as
Yeah.
well. For me, it was David Hawks.
Hmm.
David was really one of the first people that started to connect me and get me uh, connections with other trainers. He would send emails to people and say, "Hey, this guy is okay," and that went miles for developing trust with other trainers because they knew David, they didn't know me, and his seal of approval kind of opened that door. So I
Yeah.
try to keep that in mind, as a CST now, because I know, I want to be that for others as well. I want to be
Same.
that person. Um, it's tough, and I just, I want to warn people about this because this, like I said, co-training and building a mentor relationship, it's kind of like it's kind of like dating, right? Because uh, you would be surprised the number of people who contact you as a CST out of the blue that you've never spoken with before, and ask you to either be their mentor or allow you to co-train in their class
Yeah.
or in your class. And it's like saying, "Would you move in with me? I've never met you, but could we move in together?" Um, it's just you wouldn't do that, right? You have to get to
Exactly.
know them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a relationship building phase, right? That you have to have. I mean, with the majority of the trainers that I didn't know at first, I had to co-train with them 3, 4 times,
yeah,
right, in order to be able to do 50% of the class and get a recommendation letter, which is another requirement that you have. But I mean, it makes complete sense, right? They don't know your style of training. They don't know what
yeah,
type of person you are. So first thing they want you to do is just observe their class, right? To make sure that that you're okay with their materials and all of that. And a lot of times, the most of the co-trainer, the people that I co-trained with, they would, throw me a few questions here and there. And you did this with me as well, even when I was a TA in your class, that I could, maybe do a little bit of the teaching or just, answer a couple of questions, which was great, and that's the way that they get to feel, if you have the right knowledge, if you're able to handle a class. And then the second time around, it's like, okay, you can teach 2 things, in this
right.
class, so 2 15-minute things. And then after that, it's like, okay, you can teach maybe 25% of the class. And then finally you go ahead and you teach half the class. And I've gotten to teach 100% of a class as well with a couple people. But as you said before, this is something that takes time. So when we talk about having to do, I mean, of the 10 co-trains, I mean, the 10 trainings, only 5 have to be with other co-trainers. You can do some of them yourself,
Mm,
not a certified class, of course.
right.
But when you think about 5 having to be with other trainers, it doesn't mean that it's only 5 classes, right? Those 5 will turn out to be 20 classes because of how many times you have to meet with them in order to be able to, to make it what we call a qualifying event, which is teaching
Yeah.
at least 50% of the class.
Yeah. I remember that the pattern for me was I would contact one and say, "Hey, I'm pursuing this. I'd love to connect with you. I'm not asking to co-train. What I'd love to do is come in and observe your
Mm-hmm.
class. Can I observe it and help out in any way that you want?" And that was kind of my foot in the door. If I could get in and observe, then I have 2 days with that person, and then we can chat and talk, and they can get to know me, and I can get to know them.
Exactly.
And that's then they feel like, you know what, come back, and I'm doing another one. Come back, and we'll have you do something, just like you said, one small little bit,
Yeah.
and then it builds up. So it was usually about 4 to 5 in a series for me,
Yeah.
with anyone before. Understand as well. I want to make sure everyone hears this. Uh, Co-trainings are just part of it, right? There's a lot of other things that
Oh yeah.
you're required to submit, and one of those things is letters of recommendation. So this is why I say it's like a 4 to 5 class progression with any CST that you work with, because you're aiming for the recommendation, not just the co-trainings.
Exactly.
And if you don't get it, right? If you don't get a recommendation, that's going to be something that they ask you about when you submit. Why didn't this person recommend you?
As advice to whoever is listening to this and they feel that this their passion, they want to do this, is as you're working with the CSTs or as you're co-training with them, really take what they say to you to heart, right? Any feedback they give you, because the next time that you co-train with them, they want to see that you took those learnings and you applied it to how you're training. And like there was one person I was training with, I was going through a really bad time in my life when I did one of the trainings with them, and that was supposed to be my last training, and I wasn't I wasn't me 100%, and they gave me the feedback and said, I think we need to do this again. So I really brought it next time. So really make sure that you're paying attention to what they're saying. They're trying to help you. The majority of these people are not doing this to to make sure that you don't succeed, right? The majority of these people do want you to succeed, so take whatever they tell you to heart, because that's the only way you're going to grow. And even CSGs who have been CSGs for a decade, they're not perfect, so
Yeah.
everybody's trying to improve, and they want to make sure that you're doing the same.
Yeah, it's funny, because as I did that, as I met, we both have someone who kind of started it and opened the doors for us. But I'm sure you can say the same thing. I had several really strong mentoring relationships that I developed in doing
Mm-hmm.
this, and each one gave me a different perspective and a
Mm-hmm.
different felt like it's a different superpower that I gained from them, just in seeing how they did things. So, you know, looking looking forward before I did it, it was a pain, and I was thinking, gosh, I hate this. I don't want to do this. Looking back
Yep.
after I finished it, I'm so thankful for it,
Yes.
because I would not at all be the trainer I am today if it weren't for David Hawks and Kurt Peterson and Lance Dacey. There's multiple people out there. I hate to listen off names because I'm going to leave someone out and they're going to be
Yeah.
mad.
I
Um,
was thinking the same
but
thing.
I've had just about everybody on who on the podcast who mentored me through this, and really, really, like I said, really appreciate the time and energy well beyond just the class.
Yeah.
Just uh, you know, touching base with me, looking at my materials before the class, making sure that everything was in line, giving me pointers. All that stuff. Just you would not imagine the number of hours
Mhm.
that, and they're not getting paid for it,
Yep.
right? It's a free
It's all
thing.
volunteering. Yep. Yeah.
Well, I should say they're getting paid in the class.
But
So
right,
let's
but not to
right,
help you through your journey.
right,
Right.
right. So that just to be clear with everyone on that as well, right? Do not in any way think that you're going to get paid when you co-train, because it's a favor to you. So uh, that's there's an expense in doing this. Um, I'll tell you, this is one of the things I wanted to compare a little bit, because uh, I imagine the expenses dropped, but I'll kind of run it by you and see what you think. Um, so prior to COVID, when I was trying to become a CST, uh, you only could teach classes in person. So the way that you tried to find other CSTs a lot of times was just to see who's coming in a radius of where you were. That's at least how I approached it, because I'm in Dallas, and here I could drive to Austin or Houston or San Antonio, right? I could drive to other cities in Texas and pick up a class here and there. But just imagine that, right? That means I took time off of work, and that means that I had the travel cost of getting to wherever it was I was going. That means hotels, food, all that stuff of driving back and forth. I remember we bought a little car that was a little Prius that we bought right before I started that, and we jokingly called it the CST Mobile, because that car drove me all over Texas, getting to all these different training events and opportunities. So that's why I say I imagine that it was a little bit more expensive then, now that you can do it from your home and you can, kind of do it in other places, but still you're having to take time away from your job and work to do it.
Yeah, and for me, and that was the hardest part. Of course, I wasn't traveling everywhere. Of course, before the pandemic, when I did some co-trains with Anu, I did travel, so I had some expense then. But with the other ones, no, not really, right? I mean, yes, the time off work, and so that was tough. And a lot of times I was looking for classes like weekend classes that people were teaching, so that I could get on those classes instead of during the week. But yeah, definitely, I didn't have those types of expenses that you had because everything was online.
Yeah,
So it made it a lot easier, in the pocketbook, for sure, being able to do that. But the experience is also different, right?
sure.
So
Yeah, no,
so
no, absolutely.
I also lost a little bit on that as well, because for me there's nothing like an in-person class. So
I would agree, and I hope that I still hope that someday that gets back into just the regular rotation. May not be every class, but I'd love to have a regular rotation of doing in-person classes again, because you're right, it really was a different experience. um, I remember learning on my very first one that I went to. When I started it, my opinion was, I'm going to save every penny. I'm going to try to do things cheaply, because this is all out of pocket and everything. So I remember the first hotel I picked that was near it wasn't the hotel where the thing was going to be at. It was near it, and I checked in the night before. Went into the room. First of all, it was like dirty outside. It looked like it was not in the best part of town. And so I get into my room, and it was like I don't want to say it was a flea bag hotel, but it was close. It was a big chain. It was a national chain.
oh
But when I
wow.
walked in, it was one of these. I don't know if anyone else has ever had this, but uh, I was afraid to sleep in the bed, so I grabbed like the towel from the bath and laid it over the bed,
Oh my
just in
gosh.
case, So at that point, I was like, okay,
Not anymore.
there's a minimum standard,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to spend some money. That's just the way it is, but I'm not going to do this again. Um, so yeah, so that kind of makes things a little bit different. But I imagine there's other challenges too with a virtual kind of environment that I didn't have to go through. Just
Mhm.
even trying to arrange your training and develop it. It's a challenge that I know all the other CSTs went through, trying to convert from in person to virtual. So um, how was that? Just you talking through the exercise. Did you struggle with coming up with virtual exercises versus in person?
So I already had some virtual exercises because I had been working for companies that the people in my teams were all over the world. So I was
Yeah,
working remotely, and a lot of my stuff was virtual already. But when it comes to talking about the content of the class and working with somebody else, everything was very asynchronous, right? I'll send you
yeah,
my materials. You take a look at it. You tell me what. So it wasn't really a conversation like you would have if you were doing that in person. So sure, it definitely makes it more difficult to be able to synchronize one with another, what it is that we're trying to do. And yeah, I mean, I think the in-person activities are a lot more fun. So I have done my CSM class for a non-certified class in person quite a few times, and seeing the amount of fun that people are having with the activities in person, is it's definitely a different experience. And the thing is, in an online class, a virtual class, you have your activities, you do your training, but when you're on a break, you're on a break by yourself. Whereas
right, right.
when you're in person, you're on a break, but everybody's having lunch together. Everybody's, getting a snack together. People are having conversations with the trainers, and that just doesn't happen in that virtual setting. So I think that even the students lose out.
Yeah.
And when we're doing things virtually, because you don't have that added relationship, the added conversations that you would have in person, which
I
is
agree.
sad. So I love when I get the opportunity to do classes in person. So
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I hope someday that it's more regular. I don't think it would ever go back to being required
right.
to be in person. I just don't see that genie ever going back in the bottle. But I know that we're getting at Mountain Goat. We get more and more requests from private companies to come and train their group in person, and I appreciate that. I love being
Mm-hmm.
in the same space, and I remember the first one I did, it just felt like, wow, I haven't stretched these muscles and
Yeah.
so long. Do I still remember how to do it? That kind of thing. Um, so the process, just so everyone kind of understands, the process is can take you several years so you're ready to submit that first packet of materials. And you feel like you've reached an accomplishment, that you've gotten it together, and you probably have talked to your mentors and other people about it, and you crossed everything off the list. You feel like you have everything ready, and you submit it and you pay your fee, and then you wait. You have to wait for it to come up in their the trainer approval committees kind of queue, because these are volunteers as well who work on that committee, and they read through. I can't even imagine how many submissions of people. So they have to look through the materials. They have to dig through. They have to give it a really long, hard look to
Yep.
see if they think this person is ready. And I don't know what your experience was. I can tell you, my first one failed. I got it rejected and got it sent back, and was dejected and thought, "Oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? And should I just give this up?" And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what everyone thinks in any rejection. But yeah, I remember feeling all those feelings. And what was yours like? Did yours go straight through, or did your the
I wouldn't say that
materials?
it went straight through, but I
Okay.
think things have changed a little bit. I think since you submitted your application, so there are two
Yeah.
phases now after you submit your application. There is the phase where a Scrum Alliance person looks through your application, and if there are things that they feel are missing, or you're not, you didn't really talk about it the way that it is in the current Scrum guide or something, they'll get back to you and say, you need to fix this and this and this. Or if there's problems in your application, we need more information, for on this question. Can you elaborate? Like they'll get back to you before it even gets to the TAC.
Yeah.
So I think that makes things easier. So I did get, I did have that happen to me twice, where
Okay.
they said, oh, you need to change this and that, but it didn't get rejected. Right. So I was able to fix all the stuff that I needed to fix and send it back through. And the Scrum Alliance person looked it over and said, okay, the preliminary review is done, so let's go ahead and send it to the TAC, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully by the time it gets to the TAC, if the things that you had in there weren't too bad, right? I'm not saying that they're not going to reject any, but if the things were easy to fix and things that they were like, oh, okay, maybe they just missed it and they need to fix this, it'll probably go to the TAC. But then yeah, when it gets there, they get a they take a fine tooth comb and go through all your materials, your mapping document, which is something else that you have to do when you're submitting to become a CST, is how are you mapping your materials to the learning objectives. So they're going to go through that, all the materials you submit, right, and then you're either going to get invited to go before the TAC. That's where you have your interview and you have to do a 20-minute simulation of a class, or you're going to get deferred.
Yeah.
So it's a little different than your experience. I'm glad they did that though, because I think it helps the individuals who are trying to apply. Um,
I think they had just started that, because I do remember that stage. But it was a very cursory stage. It was
mhm,
it was very basically, what I remember it being is that there was a Scrum Alliance employee that would check and make sure that you had submitted everything
mhm,
that was needed. It wasn't in any way judging the content. It was just saying, you need recommendations. Do you have the recommendations? Yes, here they are. Check. And if you had all the things that were on the checklist, then they said, all right, it's
yep,
going to the TAC. Um, so yeah, mine went to the TAC and came back. And little advice for anyone who gets this far, and you do submit. If you do get a rejection, if you do get feedback from the TAC, uh, I'll phrase this in a family friendly way. But our friend Chris Lee, who's been on the podcast here, I remember hearing him give some advice to someone about this. And his advice was, whatever the TAC tells you to do, just go do that.
yep,
There's no alternative way. There's no other way around it. And listen to them, because you may not fully agree. You may think, yeah, uh, but there's no alternative. I mean, you could. I think there is an appeals process or something, but you're so much better just to say, I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, If you think I need to do something else, I'm going to go do it.
Exactly.
When you resubmit, cover whatever they said to you in spades. Just really, I remember doing that when I resubmitted mine to say, here's the feedback I got. Bam, bam, bam. Here's all the things I did to try to address the things you thought were not perfect.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't give up, right? Don't give up if that happens. And when you finally do make that through, the good part of that feeling for me was I knew that once that's checked off, it's never unchecked. I don't have to worry about it again.
Yep.
Once you pass the materials, you just have the TAC interview that's left, and you may not make it past it, but you if you go again, it's just to that last step. You don't have to do
Exactly.
the other portions. Um, so let's talk about that. I know ours may be a little different as well because this has changed over the past few years a lot. Because I know when I went prior to COVID, it was all in person. There was 2 conferences a year that you had a chance to go and do this at. And when COVID hit, I know they started to do virtual ones, and I think I may be wrong, but I think they still occasionally do virtual, but they're trying to do more in person. Yours was in
Yes.
person, right?
So mine was in person. So in the last 2 years, they only had in person. But yeah, before that, they were having various virtual ones. So I never had to go through that experience of doing it virtually. I can't even imagine what that would have been like. Uh, Probably a lot harder than in person, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were doing that. But I know that now, Scrum Alliance did send out uh, an email a few months ago, I think, saying that they're going to go to only having one global Scrum gathering a year instead of
Yeah.
two. So they're probably going to change the way that they are doing the TAC. And I don't think they know yet whether it's going to be virtual or it's going to be at regional gatherings or how that's going to work out. Or maybe
Mm.
it's going to be a hybrid, right? We have some in person if you go to the global Scrum gathering that year, and then maybe have some virtual TACs. So who knows? But yeah, no, I had it in person, thankfully.
Yeah.
Although it was, as you know, very very nerve wracking being in
Yeah.
front of all those people. So
Yeah, no, it completely is, and like you said, I can't imagine having done it in front of a camera. And I know there are people that did and have made it through since then doing
yep.
that. So I just applaud them for doing that. Um, so everyone here kind of understands and knows what that's like. It's like a college dissertation, like a doctoral dissertation
Mm-hmm.
almost, because you're going in front of them. They're going to ask you questions for about, I think it's like 20
20
minutes.
minutes.
They
Yep.
can they can ask you anything, and they want to see how you respond and how you answer, and want to see if they throw you with anything, and if you really you're in the right place for doing this kind of thing. And then you got I think it's another 20 minutes that you have to give a presentation on a topic that they give you right on the spot. So you've got to know all your stuff. You got to have that ready to go. And I remember when I passed the materials and was getting ready, I remember telling myself, "Hey, I don't want to do this twice." So I'm working every night. Every night, I had a study group. We got together. We practiced together. We gave each other tips, and there were about 4 or 5 of us that were in that group that did it just as much as we could.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd spin the wheel, find whatever the topic was, and we'd try that and see how it went. Hugely helpful. There's no way I would have passed without doing that. I don't know that I maybe needed to do it as much as I did, but it definitely, that boot camp kind of environment, I felt like really gave me a leg up by the time I got in front of them.
Yeah.
Because something's going to happen you don't expect. It's just that's the way it is.
That
You can plan
and
and
that's how it
plan.
was for me.
Yeah,
So I was told that because I don't know how it was for you. I think that before what they used to say, they just give you a topic, right, and you had to teach on that topic. Now it's tied to the
yeah,
learning objectives.
mm,
So in preparation, I went through every single learning objective and kind of figured out, using TBR training from the back of the room, the 4 C's, right, for each one of
yeah,
them. And I was under the impression that there were a couple of 4 different learning objectives that would never have been picked, which was perform daily Scrum, perform sprint planning, the ones that were to perform an event. So I never prepared for those.
Yeah.
But anyway, all the other ones, I did prepare the 4Cs, did it a million times, did a couple of mock tacks, as well. I did not as many as you did, but, with my mentor, we did some mock tacks, and
Yeah.
that definitely helped. And then, of course, I get to the tack, and they ask me to do one of the 4 learning objectives that I thought I would never have been asked.
Yeah.
And I just had to think on my feet and come up with something to do, right? So, and the reason I'm saying this is, yes, you need to prepare. You need to know every single learning objective. You need to be able to go about it the way that the Scrum Guide tells you to go about it. So be very mindful of that. And I know a lot of other people that did something similar to you, Brian, who were very successful as well. I'm a little different as a person, that I kind of need to do things on my own, and yeah, a couple of
Sure.
times do something else. But regardless how much you prepare, how much you do before, you never know what's going to happen in the tech, right? And
Yeah.
and of course, I got the one of the things that I never prepared for, never looked at, and I was still successful, right? So sometimes, the lack of preparation is helpful, and I'm not
Yeah.
telling anybody to not prepare. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just saying that, regardless how much you prepare, there's still going to be that surprise, right? That sense of surprise when you're there. Nerves are going to get in the way. You
Right.
may forget everything that you did before. So just be prepared to think on your feet, and not follow the plan, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes your plan's not going to work out. So be ready to be agile when you're in the tack, and do whatever comes to mind then. So.
Well, and I would say, I would argue that they're actually looking for that, right? They want to see what you do when something goes not according to plan. And if they feel like everything was going according to plan, they might try to throw something
Oh
at you
yeah.
that would make it not going according to plan, right? I remember on mine, I had 2 really big things that threw me off. One was I had a minor medical thing that happened the week during it, and I ended up spending the night in the hospital the night before my tack. So mine was in Austin, and I live in Dallas. So I was here in Dallas in the hospital the night before my tack, and I had been in contact with them saying, I don't think I'm going to make it. I just don't see a way. And they said, well, we'll keep your slot because, it's going to be hard to schedule otherwise.
Mm.
So I remember waking up in the hospital that night and the doctor saying, you know what, I know you have this big thing, and I'm clearing you. I think you're fine. You're okay to go. So, the doctor gave me the pass. I was like, I'm going to go because I've been preparing so long. So I've got on a plane, flew down there because that's the only way I would have made it in time. Got in there, and my big thing during it, the questions went fine. The topic was a topic I knew because at the time we had 17, I think it was 17 topics, and they told you it was going to be one of these 17. So I had charts and a plan of attack for all 17 that I knew exactly where I had memorized different little acronyms and things to try to help me memorize the key learning objectives for each topic. And I got my topic, felt good about it, drew my chart, started to teach, and realized it was kind of a 2x2 grid that I had drawn. And I realized I had drawn the graph wrong. I had flipped 2 of the boxes on it, and I had just started to talk through it when I noticed it. And I just stopped where I was. I ripped the page off, and I said, you know what? I don't even want you to look at that because that was I made a small mistake on it. Let me draw it for you again because let me show you what it is. And I just drew it live as I was doing it, and it was fine. But when I tore it off, the markers were all on the bottom, and they all flew across the room. Like there
Oh
was
my
just
gosh.
they flew everywhere. And when that happened, I was like, oh, that's it. I'm not going to get it because I got that chart wrong. But they told me that they actually liked what I did because I didn't just fold, right? I didn't just go,
Mhm.
oh, can I start again? I didn't do anything like that. I continued on, and I drew it and taught it, and it worked.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And just so the listeners here know, after you do your simulation, You're done with your 20 minutes. They ask you to step away and they're going to discuss how you did. So when I came back in, after they had told me that I made it, I was told, the way that you taught this learning objective is not at all what we expected. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you passed me. Right. But what I got is you did such a good job training, like your, uh, you know, the way that you came across that, it didn't matter that it wasn't what they expected. I still, they had, sorry for saying that they said I had balls for the way that I presented the topic.
That's awesome.
So, so don't be afraid to make a mistake either, right? Because one of the things that you're
Yeah.
going to have a chance to do is a retrospective about how you did during your interview and during your simulation. And that counts too. So it's not going to be perfect. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect. So don't be afraid to, once again, not follow that plan. Be authentic, be yourself, be self-aware, right? Know what you did wrong, and make sure that you're transparent about it when you have that conversation with them. And I think sometimes that's truly what's important.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. It's it's a long journey. There's a lot of parts to it. There's a lot of opportunity for you to have heartbreak and question whether this is the right thing for you and everything else. I you know I think you and I uh, are extremely fortunate because our we went from the TAC once and we
Yeah.
got it and we were done. I had friends that were in that study group with me that took multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there were five of us in that group, and out of the five of us, I was the only one who made it through on the first round. There were some that took 3-4 times in front of the TAC before they got it. And I remember talking to some of those friends and saying, "You're so close. Don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've come this far. The path in front of you is so much shorter than the
Right.
path behind you. So yeah, there's going to be disappointment. There's going to be lots of opportunities to think maybe this isn't for me, and you know, if you choose that, then that's fine as well. It's fine to say, yeah, I found out it's not for me. Um, but yeah, if you've come that far and you've been doing it that long, uh, you know,
You're
waiting
eventually
another
gonna
six
get it.
months,
Yeah.
right? Waiting another 6 months for another conference is just not going to derail me. Like I'm going to keep at it if that's
Yeah,
the case.
yeah, and I was going to mention that as well, right? I mean, you and I think, were the exception. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, there are many others that have made it the first try. It's not just Brian and myself, of course,
right.
but the majority of people do take a couple of tries. So, if you want to go through this, if you want to become a CST, if that's your passion to become a CST and help certify people and change people's lives through training, um, just because you don't go through the first time, it doesn't mean that you're not a good trainer. You just didn't show what they expected to see. And remember, it's people, looking at what it is that you're doing, and different tack, different day might be a completely different story, right? So it is very subjective. So don't take it personally. Don't think that you're not a good trainer just because you don't go through the first time. That's actually the norm. That most people don't go through the first time, from what I've heard. Right,
Yeah,
and it's just an opportunity for you to become an even better training from the feedback that you're getting from them. Of course, it's very easy for me to say because I went through the first time. So a lot of people are thinking, sure,
right.
you went through the first time, you have no idea what you're talking about. And yeah, I know that if I hadn't gone through, I'd be hurt, but I was
Yeah,
prepared to not go through. Right. I mean,
yeah,
I was prepared that I was not going to pass. I was hoping that I would. I was prepared not to, but for me, it's
yeah,
always it's just a learning opportunity, right? If I didn't make it, I knew that there was something that I had to become better at, and I would be
yeah.
better next time. So just remember that, if
Yeah,
things happen to you and you don't make it, and of course I feel horrible for people that don't make it, but it is
sure.
going to make you a much better trainer in the end, right? There's
Well,
something that they wanted to see that they didn't.
yeah, and I think what you're saying here is so key, and I hope people get this. There's a phrase they use for this that you'll hear people say often, talking about this process, and they call it your CST journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great phrase because it is. It's a journey,
Yes.
and I love what you said about the fact that you expected this, right? You went into it thinking, hey, if it happens, it's not going to be a problem because that's what's typical.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ready to accept it. I think the people that have the most problems are the people who go in feeling a little more entitled. Just think, hey, I've done everything I need to. You need to approve me.
Yep.
I deserve this recognition. I think that's when you have a problem. If you go into it thinking this is another step in that journey, this is another step where I'm growing and learning,
Mm-hmm.
and whether it's them saying you're through, or whether it's them saying
Yeah.
come back in 6 months
Mm-hmm.
or come back in a year or whatever it is, it's another opportunity to learn. And if that's what's important to you, it won't destroy you, right? It'll just be,
Exactly.
okay, well, I'll try again. I'll do it again.
And the other thing too to remember is, why is it that a lot of us wanted to become CSTs, right?
Right.
If it was something that anybody could do, would it really be something that a lot of people would want to be? I mean, for me, and I'm not saying that I am this, but for me, CSTs are kind of the elite of trainers, for Scrum Alliance. And of course, I'm Scrum Alliance advocate. I know that there's other organizations out there, but for me, there's a reason why there's so much stuff that we need to do to become a CST, right? Because they want to make sure that the people who are CSTs are the best of the best. So if it were something that were very easy to achieve, it probably wouldn't be something as
Worth it.
desired as it
Right.
is right now, and yeah, or worth it, as you're saying. So
Yeah.
so as Brian and I are saying, if you don't make it, it's like you're so close, right? I mean, if you made it that far, you are so close. And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of you, maybe it's you the next day, right?
Yeah.
Or a week from now or a month from now, but it's just a little bit more improvement. And all of us, I think, yeah, as agilists, right, the one thing that we focus on is continuous improvement, and think about this as continuously improving yourself. And just because Brian and I are CSTs, and of course Brian has been doing this for a few years longer than I have, it also doesn't mean that we're perfect. Brian and
Right.
I still have a lot to learn.
Yep.
Mike Cohn, who owns Mountain Goat, I mean, he's been a trainer for forever, and I'm sure he also doesn't feel like he's perfect, and that there's
Yeah.
still things that we can get better at. So it's just another choice, or another chance, right, to continuously improve as a person, as an agilist, and as a trainer.
Yeah. I agree so strongly. And just hard things that are hard to do, that just makes it all the better when you achieve them. I'm sure anybody here listening can think about that in your life. Anything that was hard for you to achieve and you put in a lot of effort to do it, it's so sweet when you actually cross that finish line. And I think the same thing is true for this. It was hard to achieve, but I remember, and I still feel like completely worth it.
Yeah,
Completely
for
worth the
sure.
effort. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. All the late nights, all the numerous hours, co-training, and
Yeah.
if and one more thing that I will say, Brian, sorry, is
Yeah.
if you're
No, it's
really
okay.
passionate about this, it really shouldn't matter how long it takes. As I said, it took me 6 years
Yeah.
to get here, and it's a goal that I've always had, and I'm a mindset coach as well on the side. And for me, it's really working towards your goals, even if it's 30 minutes a day.
Mhm.
That's what's going to make you a winner, if you will, right? It's not becoming a CST. It's what you're learning during your journey, and how much better you're getting throughout your journey, right? That's what really matters.
Yeah.
So just think about this, right? So I just wanted to leave that out there as well.
That's a great way to leave it. Lucy, thanks so much for coming on
Yeah,
again. I
of
really
course.
appreciate you
My
being
pleasure.
here, and
Yep.
congratulations again on
Thank you so much,
getting
Brian.
your CST.
Thank you.